And we'll get the recording going. So, as everyone's joining us, hi everybody on this. I think we're on a Thursday afternoon,
Yeah.
still on the West Coast, but I think I have two ladies here in the room with me that are maybe on the East Coast of our
Yes,
country and another
evening
country.
time. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it's evening.
Evening cocktail time. Well, it's like, I guess
Yeah.
technically it's cocktail time for us too here. So Sharon Kurtzman, welcome to Virtual Warwicks. And
I'm so pleased and honored to be here. So thank you. Thank you so much for having this event.
oh, we're so happy to have you. And Rachel, welcome back. Did you see
Oh,
you what, like 2 weeks ago?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were Jane Healy. That was
Yeah.
such a fun night.
Oh,
She's
it was
so
a good night too.
sweet.
Yeah.
She's wonderful. I know Jane.
Amazing.
She's
Yeah.
fabulous, and I
Yeah.
love her
Oh,
books.
so
We
good.
talked about your book actually.
Oh,
That came up.
well, she blurbed my book. Also, she wrote blurb for my book.
Which is
Beautiful,
so
really beautiful
awesome.
book.
No, I
She's
love the
such
I love the author
such a nice
community
person.
because y'all are
Yeah.
such good supporters of each other and bringing wonderful things. So I have opened up the chat. So let us know where you're calling in from. We're just real quick as people are getting settled. I'm Julie Savinsky. I'm the director of events at Warwick's. We are located in La Jolla, San Diego area. So if you are in the La Jolla, San Diego area, we would love for you to come to the store and shop. But we can also ship this wonderful book. I think I see it over Sharon's shoulder there. The Lost Baker of Vienna. So
Yeah,
there it is.
gorgeous cover.
So I'll be putting in how to order that in the chat there for y'all. But Sharon, where are you calling in from today?
Raleigh, North Carolina,
Okay.
from
And
from
weather
home.
is okay for you right now?
It's actually beautiful. It's about in the 70s and getting a little cooler at night. Still hitting 80 during the day, but not a cloud in the sky.
Oh,
And
lovely.
I think we're supposed to be, dry for the coming week. So I'm thrilled.
That's good. That's good news.
Yeah.
And Rachel coming in from Toronto, you're not like you're
Toronto.
on vacation or anything, right?
Pardon me?
You're
Sorry.
not on vacation?
No. I'm in Toronto and we have had a blast of autumn weather, which has been
Ooh.
so nice because it has been such a hot, humid, dry summer. So
Yeah.
everyone's kind of feeling like they're breathing fresh air. And I really, really,
Yeah.
really like it. I've been
I love
waiting
it.
since May.
I know. It's like we always want when it's cold, we want the warm, and then when it gets too
Yeah.
hot, it's like, oh, bring back the
Right.
fall. We want the fall.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got Gainesville, Virginia. We got some Vancouver. Welcome everybody. So Rachel and Sharon are going to chat for, like I said, I'm going to put the book, how to order the book from us. If you are so inclined, we'd love you to order it from us. But if you don't, please support your local bookstore wherever you're at. If you're in Canada, so there's ones a wonderful independent
So
bookstore.
many indie bookstores
Yeah.
around. And yes, Warwick's Publishers Weekly Bookstore of the Year.
We
Aren't
have
you
so
amazing?
and okay, just so that some of you know, some of you have the setting set for host and panelists only when you're commenting. So just go in there and check it so that everybody can
Oh,
see your
wow,
comments.
Istanbul,
Istanbul,
Turkey.
Turkey.
That
Wow.
is actually
That's a
Asena is
really cool.
one of my dear friends from my
Oh,
MFA program. And
Wow.
Asena, I'm so glad you're here.
I love that. That's what I love about these virtual events. Because I mean, let's face it, I said I would have a hard time maybe coming to San Diego to see an event with
Yeah.
you. So this is what makes it so much
This is
fun.
so, oh
Yeah.
wow, Vienna, Virginia. I
Yeah.
know this place because I always get excited for any Viennas.
I
Any
know.
mention of
Right.
Vienna,
Or in
right?
I
Austria,
know. I
yeah.
love that.
So Rachel and Sharon are going to chat for about 30, 35-ish minutes. And then we always love questions from you as well. So as a reminder, the Q&A button is at the bottom of your screen. If you have to leave for any reason, it is being recorded. We do have a YouTube channel where all of these reside as well. So let me introduce these wonderful ladies, and then I will head out and they can start the conversation. So Sharon Kurtzman worked in television marketing before pursuing her dream of becoming a writer. She earned her MFA in fiction from Vermont College of Fine Arts and her undergraduate degree from Syracuse University's Newhouse School of Public Communication. The Lost Baker of Vienna was inspired by the war and post-war experiences of her own family, who were Holocaust survivors. As she says, she lives in North Carolina with her husband, and they have two adult children. As we said, she's here to talk about her new book, The Lost Baker of Vienna, And joining Sharon is Rachel McMillan, Warwick's interviewer extraordinaire. Rachel is the author of over 20 novels, including the best-selling The London Restoration and The Mozart Code and the upcoming Operation Scarlet. She has also co-written The Liberty Scarf and Castle Keepers with Amy Runyon and Janelle Sazelski. Her works of nonfiction include Dream Plan Go and the upcoming An Aim at Eternity, The Life of Christopher Wren. As she said, she lives in Toronto, works as a literary agent, busiest person in the business, and is always planning her next trip to Vienna. So with that, ladies, have a great conversation, and I'll see you in a little bit.
Thanks, Julie. Well, everybody, I actually came about meeting Sharon because I I actually, if you've been following Warwick's or me, and I guess I've been doing interviews here for about 5 years now, since 2020. Regular viewers know I am obsessed with Vienna. I love Vienna. I love anything set in Vienna. And when I saw your publisher's marketplace deal announcement, Sharon, I was like, well, I need to start stalking her on Instagram. So I did. And I was very fortunate because Sharon was actually in Toronto earlier this late spring, I think early summer.
Yeah,
And we got
yeah,
to sit down for coffee, and I got to learn just how amazing her family history is beyond the bounds of this story. So one of the things that I think I really want to talk about tonight is the fact that sometimes we hear that stories and novels are inspired by someone's family history. But I think readers who haven't picked up Lost Baker of Vienna yet need to know that this is not, my cousin's uncle's best friend was here. This is your mother's story, and it
yeah,
is
yeah.
incredibly told in a way that honors her, but still is some fiction. Everyone, please buy this book because it's amazingly written. It's such an electrifying work of historical fiction. It is set in a time period that and place that I happen to know about because I've done a lot of research in post-war Vienna, but is not necessarily commonly researched or explored by a lot of people. So just make sure you buy this one because we're talking like your mother's story. I remember just being just it's so beautiful. And as I said, often writers, approach or cite a familial background and inspiration, but yours is so intimate. I know this is a big question, so perhaps we can just take a little bite off, but how does your mother's history play into the Lost Baker of Vienna? Wow, that's a big question.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you, first of all, so much for that introduction of the book and how we met. And I loved having coffee with you that day as well, and was so glad that you were able to meet me. It was so wonderful to connect in person. Um, and to connect online beforehand.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the stalking. So to get to your question, so the book, as you said, is inspired by my family, by my mother, aunt, and grandmother. And so how all of that plays into the book is, so the book is mostly a post-World War II story, as you said. And my mom, I always knew my mother was a Holocaust survivor from a young age. You could see actually, I have visuals now.
I
The
love your
picture,
backdrop for this. This is fantastic.
well, the photo there is the little girl. That's my mom. That was taken at 4 years old in 1929 in Vilna, which is the now Vilnius in Lithuania. At the time, Vilna was, sometimes part of Poland, sometimes it was part of Lithuania, sometimes it was part of Soviet Union. My mom used to say they would open the window and poke their heads out or read the newspaper and discover which country they were part of on any given day. But again, even though I knew my mom was a survivor, she spoke sparingly about her experiences. And so, from being in a ghetto to being in a concentration camp to a DP camp to Vienna, and then se- into emigrating to America, where my grandfather's family already was. And my grandfather was murdered during the Holocaust. And so the photo of the man, my ring light is reflecting on it a little bit. That's my grandfather. And to over here, that's my grandmother. So that's my mom's
That's
parents. And the
amazing.
only reason we have all of these pictures is because they were sent to relatives here. So I think I might have mentioned this when we went for coffee. So, growing up, it was, we were here, we were here, we were here. And especially that last part of liberation, DP camp to Vienna and then to the US. In my thoughts, that all happened in about 3 weeks. Everyone was wrapped in fuzzy blankets and sent into the loving arms of their family.
Mhm.
And when I was in college, though, I took a class my sophomore year on Judaism. And I came home on a school break and I asked my mom if I could interview her for a paper. And she agreed. And we sat down at the kitchen table probably about noon. My dad was at work. And my mom talked to me in a way she never had before. She opened up to me. We sat there for hours. So this was the first time I heard about details of the VIENNA ghetto, that when they hid, which they did, when the ghetto was liquidated, they hid very much like the Frank family, in a hiding place my grandfather and two other men had built. There were about 5 families in this hiding place. They stayed there for months with very little food, and they used to sneak out. My mom told me during this conversation, they would sneak out at night with buckets, taking turns to catch water from the snow, like melting snow dripping down the drain pipe. And that's how they had water. And then from there, my mom told me that when they were caught, they were actually sent to a second ghetto, the Kovno ghetto. And then they were sent to the concentration camp. And this was the first time I ever heard the name of the concentration camp. It was Stutthof. And then I heard about they were liberated and they were in a DP camp. And then they ended up escaping the DP camp and ending up in Vienna. And then I learned they were in Vienna for close to 2 years. They, because of immigration quotas that went back to 1924, US immigration quotas,
Yeah.
they couldn't get out. And my mom said my grandmother went every day to the consulate, which I assumed at the time was the American consulate, and to try and find and connect with my grandfather's family in the US. And it took, I think about a year and a half to finally make that connection. And the astonishing part of that is even if you had that connection, because you needed a sponsor in order to go to the US, even if you had a sponsor, you were not guaranteed a visa because there were so few in 1945 and 1946. So while you had probably thousands of people, not just in Vienna and not just in Austria,
Right.
but really survivors across Europe who had sponsors, but there were only a few thousand visas to be given. And so thousands still stayed in Europe, were trapped in Europe. So in Vienna, my mom said my mother and grandmother, all three of them worked in a hotel kitchen. So getting back to I'm not taking such a small bite
No,
out of
I
this
just
question, but
I really was hoping you would give this depth, but I also know you probably have told this story so many times, but I was absolutely rocked off my chair when I heard it in your voice. And just for listeners, DP means displaced person, just in case you haven't
right.
heard the acronym before, but
Yeah.
so different from the 3 weeks that you thought, and so
Oh my
different from
gosh.
this
Yes.
idea that we have that the end of the war meant, big celebrations, then everybody was home. No, the freaking paperwork and the way that people had to keep going. And
Right.
the hotel kitchen aspect obviously opened up a little bit of a creative path for you, but just imagine everybody, you know your mother for the first 20 or so years of your life. You were in college at the time, and you hear bits and pieces, but then this entire you must have left that conversation thinking, I just met a new person today.
Yes. Oh
This is
my
my
gosh.
mom. I love
Yeah.
my mom, but this is my mom and a new person that I'm meeting for the first time. And the fact that she was able to raise you with all of this carried on her shoulders is just, and I know she's not the only survivor who chose to, and why do you think it was? And I think I know the answer because we talked about this at coffee, but
Yeah.
why do you think it was that you're interviewing her for a school assignment is what perhaps gave permission for the doors to open?
Yeah. So, I prior prior it wasn't the first time I ever asked questions.
Mhm.
But what would usually happen is my mom would tell me a few things, and we would get to a point, she would start to cry, and then the conversation was over. One, she couldn't go on, and I didn't want to cause her any pain. So this conversation when I was in college, when we sat for hours and hours, and she talked in depth about things, at one point she did start to cry. And I said, "Okay, Mom, it's okay. I have enough for my paper." But she insisted on going on. And I think because it was for school and school was so important and school was so important to me that she insisted on continuing to talk. And going back a little bit to what you had asked prior to that, so that was, I heard more in depth about their lives in Vienna. And the thing that stayed with me for decades and became the seed for the Lost Baker of Vienna is not just that they were working in a hotel kitchen, as I have the fictional character Hannah Rosenzweig and her brother and mother working in a hotel kitchen in Vienna, is Vienna was so dangerous after the war. It
Mhm.
was one of the surprising pieces of research that I didn't know prior to starting this book was that the country was divvied up among the Allies. So there were four sections, and the US, UK, France, and the Soviet Union each governed a section of the country. And then in Vienna, it was divvied into five. So each Allied country governed a section of the city, and then there was a coalition at the center. And so there were horrible food shortages after the war. There were housing shortages. I mean, so much of the city was reduced to rubble. There was no coal, and so you had a thriving black market. Okay, just like in Germany and especially Berlin. In many ways, Berlin and Vienna were like mirror cities of each other at the time. And so my grandmother, when soon after they got to Vienna, told my mother and my aunt to date. She encouraged them to date. She told them, "We are three women alone in the city and we need protection." And I was astounded by that. I could not wrap my mind around how, after they had survived two Jewish ghettos, a horrible concentration camp, and not that there was anything other than a horrible
No.
concentration camp, escaping a displaced persons camp. And here they were in Vienna, and they're in danger. They're still
Women
in
had
danger.
no, because we share this research passion. Like I did
Yeah,
Mozart Code with, so I spent years researching this. Women had no opportunity to make money, many of them without resorting to the world's oldest profession. And they didn't
right.
have any agency to protect themselves and just walking alone at night, a city overtaken. And I think that's something we forget because we assume it's, and you have, we've both been there for research and for fun. It's such a
Yeah, yeah.
beautiful place,
It's a
but it
beautiful
was
city.
so, and just the mismatch of languages and who spoke what. And
Right, right,
the Soviets did not allow Red Cross materials to make it over to their quarter, but the Americans were sending in, food and supplies. It's just such a fascinating, and please read this book so you can learn more about this because it really is a fascinating period of
it
history
is. Oh,
that
yeah. And
is
yeah,
so underrepresented. And so for your mom to, you think you survive one of these hurdles, these
right.
magnanimous life-changing, earth-shattering things that we cannot imagine surviving. And then to survive the next part and the next part. And there's no break because they get to
Right.
Vienna, post-war Vienna, and for years waiting and waiting and checking and not being sure that they'll survive, even though the war is like that post-liberation feeling of imprisonment is just
Right.
so
Right.
mind-boggling. It must have just shattered you to be,
Well, it shattered what I said before of it thinking, okay, everybody they're liberated
yeah.
and wrapped in blankets and sent to family. And that was just not the case. But it's so interesting. So, as I said, that conversation were the seeds for this book. And it also opened a floodgate for between my mom and me in discussing her experiences. She told me more stories after that. There was another project when I was a senior. I was a screenwriting major in college, and we did a senior thesis for our last semester where they had an Emmy-winning screenwriter who mentored the screenwriting students. And I did a 1 hour teleplay, just the screenplay, it's the only other time I've really written about my mom was as a senior in college. And it was about a 16-year-old woman, young, girl in the Vilna ghetto during the war, and a 16-year-old girl in Springfield, New Jersey, where I grew up, whose mom was a Holocaust survivor and how her experiences impacted their relationship. And my mom, told me more stories for that. And as a graduating senior, all the screenplay, screenwriting majors who were graduating, we did a table read of our screenplays. And our parents were invited to that. So my mom was there for that. And
Oh,
she loved it. But I'll add too, even with all that danger, and everything they had gone through. I will never forget my mom telling me about working in the hotel kitchen and they got so fat. And she laughed and laughed like it was a triumph, which it was. And my mom had a really distinct laugh. She laughed like from her belly with her whole body and just invited you to laugh with her. And it really also carries through to the book because it is all those horrible things that you said before and the danger. But that moment of my mom telling me that to me reflects her resilience and her
yeah.
hope. And that, I think the whole, aside from like I love food, I'm a former food writer, that is where the baking and the food in the book really comes from. Because to me, the food in the book is hope, and it's hope
It's
for the
it's like
future.
a manna type thing for
Yeah.
the replenishing, and I do feel that we should let readers know who haven't explored this book yet that there is that sense of hope. Yes, it is a dark period of history. It's a fascinating period of history, and you will wade through a lot of injustice and cruelty, but there's such a beautiful hope to this story, and I quite enjoy that thinking about how I know you have sadly lost your mother, but was the writing of this book a little bit like spending time with her again?
Yes. Yes.
And you said around
A
COVID time,
hundred million
right?
times. Yes. I'm sorry.
Around COVID, right? When
Yes.
when
Yes.
things were just so hard
Yes.
and isolated, to be able to have a bit of your mom with you.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I mean, so I know I shared this when we had coffee. I have wanted to write about, I always knew I was going to write about my mom's experiences.
Yeah.
I've wanted to be a writer since I was 5 years old. And, in college, as I said, I was a screenwriting major, and then I worked in television marketing for 9 years. And when the year my mom passed away in 2000, and it was shortly after she passed away when my son was 2. that I started writing my first book. So Lost Baker is actually my sixth manuscript.
That was a question of mine. Like you have
I cut to the chase.
got to no, but I find this quite fascinating. I think, anyone watching should know that often the first book published is not the first book written. And it's almost
Right.
like all of that experience led you to the part where
Oh,
it
yeah.
did. The most,
Yes.
I would, I think you'd agree with me, the most important story of your life. You'll have
Yeah.
more, but this
Yeah.
one is
Oh,
this is a
yeah.
biggie. Everything was preparing your screenwriting history because the dialogue, the cinematic feel of the book, the fact that you did food writing, all of that is feeding into why this book is able to be so special and embraced. So it's really just, whoa, you're cool.
Thank you. And so, as you said, right at the start of COVID, I got sick.
Yeah.
And I believe I had COVID. I couldn't get tested. I was sick for about 3 weeks. And once I recovered, as I knew I was always going to write this, and I had this sense of urgency then that I have to do it now because something could happen to me and I might not get the chance. And I could not let my mom's stories die with her. And then also on top of that, it was a horrible time and a scary time. And I wanted my mom. She had been gone for 20 years. And I think in the writing of this book, I went looking for her. And so, what you said before in the question, I found her. I found her in a different way than I had ever known her. Just like you said, that conversation in college, like seeing my mom through an entirely different lens. And I have always been in awe of my mother, aunt, and grandmother. And that just grew exponentially, knowing the places they were and the dangers that they faced. And even if something wasn't specifically done to them, they certainly witnessed it.
Yes.
And I felt my mom with me through the entire writing of this book. That picture actually sat like right here to my right while I was writing the book the entire time. And as a author yourself with so many books, you know that when you come to the end of a draft and you type the end, those are the two best words in the in the dictionary for any writer. And I would, of course, feel that sense of like, yay, I did another draft, I got through another draft. And that would last about like 2 minutes because then suddenly I would be bereft because I felt in some ways like I was losing my mom all over again. And I couldn't wait to go back in and revise again. And I have said, I could have written this book for the rest of my life because it kept my mom and my family with me. And it's even doing this, and I've had book events, bookstore events this past week since the book came out, and in talking about them, I'm bringing them not just to me, but to everyone here listening, So it's wonderful. It's very fulfilling. I can add, that conversation with my mom in college. The last thing she said to me, my dad came home. It was dark. We didn't even turn on a light in the kitchen. There was like a little bulb over the stove. And my mom said to me when we were ending, she said, I tell you these things so the world remembers what happened to us.
I think
And it was very much a promise between us. I was the family writer, and it was, my conviction to write this book, her experiences in some way. I struggled between fiction and nonfiction, and finally decided historical fiction was the way I wanted to do it. Um, it's just meant everything to me.
And I think that it's really important. You said, your mom and your grandma and your aunt bore witness to tragedy.
Right.
And in the same way, you bore witness by listening. And in the same way, we can do the honor of basically, I'm telling everybody, Sharon will need to be in the book club business, virtually or in person, for the next several years because
I have 7 scheduled already.
which is like she'll be tired, but we got to keep this going. I joke, but I don't mean to. This is a very serious thing is that, we live in a time period where it is so easy to falsify events. It's so easy to believe what we see on the internet, AI, even and I pride myself on being like, this isn't real. We have these moments where we're almost taken in. And what we need is to still have the voices of people who actually experienced it. And while not everyone is still around who can speak firsthand, what we need is books like this. And I'm actually really happy you chose historical fiction as the vessel for this because you do something brilliant. You open with Zoe's pursuit of her history in 2018. You give us that universal experience of someone seeking. You offer a bridge between the reader so that they can step in her shoes and explore and excavate, much like you did when you were going into your mother's story. And I think that there is a way that fiction has of creating empathy and creating a universal experience that sometimes nonfiction doesn't have because the experiences can seem so removed, but when we fall for the prose and the characters, not saying nonfiction doesn't do this. I love nonfiction. I just wrote a whole 400-page Christopher Wren one, but I think that you're choosing this particular platform for this incredible story is one way to help us all bear witness to not only a period that is spoken of quite a lot, the Holocaust, obviously the ghetto. We've learned a lot about Poland, about Germany. We hear these stories. What your mom and aunt experienced in Austria is not really something that people talk about as much, at least not. And we have also talked about how visiting Vienna now more and more, it is pronounced. This is where people were murdered. It is one of those things that is for years was just not spoken to. But I was just there. One of my trips, I've been several times this year. I'm so lucky. But one of my recent trips, I actually went to an exhibit dedicated to the Allied occupation and it just gave, it was after our coffee actually where we had talked about this. So I really want to commend you because what you've done is pretty much a big sacrifice because you're giving us your story of something so close to you, but it's still through the rubrics of a really difficult publishing world. You are setting yourself up for people to read it and judge it and critique it. You must have had a little bit of trepidation as well as, oh, I've done it. I've done my job. I've gotten the story out there to the best of my ability. Did you have those moments where it was like, oh my gosh? Or did you think I've done my best and the world can just think what they like?
Yeah, well, so there's so many layers in the answer to that
Yeah,
question.
it was a ramble.
No, it was all good. I do want to say, in choosing historical fiction, which I agree, I mean, I feel was the right path for how to share my family's experiences. And I did not make this up. I wish I could remember where it originated, but that how, history books, nonfiction books tell us what happened. Whereas in historical fiction, lets the reader know how it felt. And I felt
Yeah.
that was really important too. And so in the book, my Hannah Rosenzweig's experiences, her path through the war is my family's path through the war. Her war experiences, those are my family's stories. And you touched on Zoe. Zoe having the dual timeline and a present day character who is, third generation,
Mhm.
to a survivor, where I'm on the second generation. Having that point of view in the book was really important to me because I wanted to show, on one simplest part, that how war is bad, but also how it ripples through generations, the devastation. And so having Zoe as a lens and starting with her was really important to me. And my goodness, you touched on it, that, in hindsight, especially, I see so much of myself in Zoe. I am not 28 years old, in case you can't guess from Zoom. But, she was searching for the truth about her family's experiences, just as I was. And she's a food writer. I'm a former food writer. She's a food writer in Vienna in 2018. I was a food writer in Vienna in 2018. And so it was all really important. And getting back to the last part of what you were discussing, so I've had a long journey. As I said, this is the sixth book. I have had, between books one and four, conservatively, 350-ish agent rejections. My fourth book got me my first agent. That agent left agenting. I passed to another agent within the agency where she had worked. And so books four and five went out on submission, died on submission. For those who don't know, that means submission is when your agent sends the book out to publishers, and dying on submission is when no one buys it. So I ended up parting ways with my second agent very amicably, and I was partway early in the writing of The Lost Baker of Vienna. So how can I say this? I had I had no expectations of all these things to come. I just knew that I had to write this book.
Oh, I
So
love
when I
that.
parted ways with my second agent, I had a moment, like writers create these, all is lost moments for their characters. And I had that moment for about 10 days of, what am I doing? And should I even keep writing? But because I was writing this book, I could not stop. I would not stop. It would be like giving up on my mother. And I didn't know. I remember there were so many times I was like, I'm writing this, I'm doing it to the best of my ability, and it's possible no one would read it. But I am going to try. I'm going to try and get these stories out. And when, I had this, like Cinderella fairy tale writer experience, when, about 6 months before I was done with the book, one of my dearest friends, Teresa Ann Fowler, who is a brilliant author, New York Times bestselling author, she had a new book out, and her agent was coming down to North Carolina for
Oh,
the
I
launch
love
of
this
that book.
story. I love this
And
story.
my friend, just happened to see, there was a dinner beforehand, happened to seat me next to her agent at dinner. And my friend knew all about what I was writing, of course. And so her agent asked me about it, and we chatted for a while. And she was super interested. And we left it basically that when I was done, she wanted to see the book right away, as soon as I was done with it. And I was thrilled because she had always been like my dream agent. And so 6 months later, I finished. I sent it to her. It was actually right before Christmas, when you're told not really to send anything to
Yeah.
agents.
All these
And
publishing rules that just never work.
right. And then she read it really quickly. And the day after Christmas, wrote to me how much she loved it. And we scheduled a call. And 3 days later, on December 29th, because I always remember, she signed me as a client, and we did a little bit of revision before the book went on submission, about 2 months. And in early March, the book went on submission, and within days, we had interest. And Pamela Dorman of Pamela Dorman Books Viking was super interested and offered a preempt, which, for those in publishing who don't know, a preempt is when an editor really, really wants a book and makes an offer to take it off the table so no one else
So
can
no
buy
one
it.
can have an auction and no one gets a chance. And you know what
And
a, it's
yeah,
amazing.
it was a fairy tale. So it's, in going back to the end of your question, it it was magical and a fairy tale, and I had none of those expectations, really. And this is all amazing and remarkable to me to be here talking to people. And as you said, about being a witness, there's an uh, Elie Wiesel
Yes.
quote about when you hear a witness, you become a witness.
Oh, I love that. And everyone
Yeah.
read Night
Oh my
by
gosh,
Elie
that
Wiesel
book
if you
is,
haven't,
yes,
but maybe read
is
it during the
phenomenal.
daytime. It's not something I could read just before bed because it's so
Yeah,
powerful.
yeah.
And one of the things that we should turn it over to Julie for some questions because I have been taking up all your time. Um, but one thing that I think is really interesting is the timing of the release of the novel and how needed it is in a tumultuous moment in where we're living through another major period of history in the world. And if the book had come out, if you had gotten, one of those agents from the 350 rejected. I work in this world. I am an agent. I know how much this sucks.
I
I know how much this sucks, but I just feel that this book coming out at this time is helping it reach so many people.
Yeah,
And I really am overjoyed that it has taken off the way it has because your mother and your grandmother and your aunt and your family deserve the actual artistry and sacrifice you have given to share this with all of us in such a poignant and prescient way. And so I will, like, I've already told everybody I have ever met in my life to read this book, and I will never stop.
thank you.
So
I
let's
appreciate
get
it.
to some questions from people that are not me.
We love your questions, though, Rachel. You always bring
They
out
were fabulous.
and you always bring out the best in the author interviews, and so we so appreciate all of your questions always. I just wanted to make a note that as I was listening to you, Sharon, your younger self, are you just so thankful, or how do you feel about interviewing your mother and knowing to interview your mother? I mean, how does that feel this many years later?
It's a gift, really. I view those those times, that conversation and ones we have had after as such a gift that I get to hold on to now.
Right. And I mean, and I think the thing that you brought out too, Rachel, and both of you did in the interview was, there's a lot written about World War II. I don't know that people understand how widespread the atrocities were. And this is a perfect example of how it was all over. And bringing these stories out shows it. I mean, everybody concentrates on Germany and Poland, but it was so widespread.
And
That's the thing.
Yes, yeah,
anti-Semitism in Austria
Right.
predates World War II by
right, right,
centuries,
Right.
right.
which is something,
And
we had a question, someone's going there, you will see
Right.
firsthand
hmm,
some of how that pieces together.
Yeah. Well, let's get to some of the questions. So Stephanie she wants to know, how has your family reacted to the book? Did they know your
Oh,
mother's
yeah.
history? What messages do you want readers to take away from the book besides the key theme of hope and resilience?
so to answer the question about my family, they have been incredibly supportive. They have pretty much if they haven't finished the book, they're all reading it right now. And they see that and know that I wrote this to honor our family, to honor my mom, my aunt, and my grandmother. And as I said, had bookstore events like over the past week. My launch event here, my children came, my in-laws came, my aunt's children, my cousins
Oh,
came,
wow.
and two of their children came, and so that's my aunt's grandchildren, and so it has been incredible, just such an incredibly supportive group, just cheering me on. One of my cousins, I swear, she is hand selling this book on Facebook, just telling, like you, Rachel, telling everyone to read it. It is really wonderful. I had an event actually last night in New Jersey, and my brother and my sister-in-law and my nieces were there, my niece's husband. And, again, they're reading it, they're working through it. One niece has already finished. She says, I have so many questions for you. So we're going to either have a talk or a very long text exchange. Um, and, my kids, it's been wonderful, fulfilling, and gratifying that they see what I see, because during the writing of the book, it was, at times I felt a tremendous responsibility, to 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 honor them, to get it right, to get the history right.
Mm.
So it's extremely gratifying to me. And this remind me the second part of
Well,
that
I
of
was
the
going
poem?
to, before we get to the second part, but I was going to interject a little bit because maybe some of your family members did or didn't know about this, which was part of the second part of the question. But I think
Yeah.
you touched on this too a little earlier, where part of their resilience was not probably talking about it openly with family.
Right.
They were of that generation where you moved on, you moved forward, you had to take that step forward. So the second part of the question is, did they know your mother's history, your family?
Oh yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. Because like I said, I knew there was never an aha moment for me. Like I knew my mom was a survivor. And by the time I was in elementary school, like 8, 9 years old, and I knew to equate some of my mom and my family's experiences to Anne Frank and the Frank
Mm.
family, and how they hid. And my brother knew, my cousins definitely knew. My aunt, talked more vividly about
Mm.
things for years, but she didn't really start talking to me about things until my mom passed away. And I remember like when we were sitting Shiva, my aunt started telling me even more of their stories. And my aunt used to go out and talk um, to schools. She would go to schools, to colleges, and speak about her experiences. So the entire family, everybody knew. Everybody
Yeah.
knew.
And then the last part of the question was, what messages do you want readers to take away from the
Yeah.
book besides the key theme of hope and resilience?
Yeah. I mean, I said it earlier on its simplest level that war is bad, that hate does such damage. And that, hate and othering, it's it needs to stop.
Right. And these, your aunt going out and talking about it. Oh, and these books, this is what we have to keep people knowing. They can't pretend like this didn't have, they can't say, oh, that was so long. No, it wasn't that long ago. And
Right.
we have to keep it in the forefront of people's minds. Christina says she's actually going to Vienna next month. And she loves
I
it there
love
too.
that.
Yeah. In relation to your book, is there some place that she needs to visit while she's there?
Oh my gosh, there is such a long list. So if she's reading the book, she should go to even just to see, and they have a great lounge, Hotel Imperial, which is the inspiration for the Empress Hotel in the book. It's hard for me to even say Hotel Imperial. I always have to like think for a minute in my mind, because in my mind, it is the Empress
And didn't
Hotel.
you create an art gallery or paintings that don't
Yes,
actually exist in it, but in your
yes,
head, that's how you created it. So the
yes.
template,
Oh my gosh. When we
go
went
look for
back,
those paintings.
I know when we went back in 2024, I was just telling the story. I took tons of video and pictures, to use for promotion when the book came out. And, so in the Empress Hotel, there was a second floor art gallery. And so I went up the stairs, I turned, and there's no art gallery and there's no space for it. So I actually went down to the front desk and said, so in 2018, was there an art gallery on the second floor? And he tells me no. And so clearly I created it for the book and the Empress Hotel and thought it was real. And the funniest thing is I went back up to our room, my husband, we were there together. And I said, you know the art gallery on the second floor? And he's like, yeah. I said, it actually doesn't exist except in my book. And he's like, what are you talking about? He remembered it too.
That's crazy. I love it. So for our last question here, it's a little bit of it's from a Senna. And she says she's so proud of you and what a wonderful
Thank you.
event this is. She wonders how the publishing of this book affects your current creative process and your current work.
Yeah, so I think Asena knows I'm working on my new book, which is also historical fiction. And I am about 60 pages from the end of the second draft.
Wow.
So yes, it is a piece of research that I came across about 12 years ago while writing this book. And while Lost Baker is mostly a post-World War II story, the new book is mostly a pre-World War II
Mm.
story. Also in Vienna, also in Austria, and I'm holding it a little close, but I can say it is inspired by true people and real events. I am fictionalizing the people that it centers on, and it focuses on two Jewish sisters in the mid 30s, leading into Anschluss when Germany annexed Austria and the impact on their
Mm.
lives.
Sounds
So the
fantastic.
person going to Vienna, if you go to the Vienna Museum near the
Yeah.
Charles Church, there is an entire floor that's dedicated to that period of
Mm.
history,
Oh,
leading into Kristallnacht, leading into
yeah.
the
Yeah.
Anschluss. So it's also free admission. So you might
Cool.
want to check that out as
Love
Well,
that.
well.
I cannot wait. And I'll just add this one little thing. My family was here for my launch and I got asked this question. I was talking about going back and doing research, and now they all want to come.
I love
Everyone's coming with me.
I love it. A good thing. Maybe you need to lead a tour group there. You and Rachel could lead
Right?
a
I
Vienna
know,
Sharon,
tour.
Rachel.
our next
Oh my
coffee
gosh.
will be in Vienna,
I
not in
Right.
know.
Toronto. That would be amazing.
You guys could, I think people would pay to go with you, ladies, to have a Vienna tour for both of you. Right,
That would be amazing.
another business option there, Rachel, for you.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up here, Rachel, very quickly, can you tell us
I
either what's
just
coming
don't have
next?
dates.
No
But
dates,
I
and
can
also where
say,
people can find you.
yeah, so 2026-ish, Operation Scarlet is coming out. It's just
Hey.
taking more time. My Christopher Wren biography is out next year, 2026. And then my novel after Operation Scarlet is set in Paris and Rouen. The one after that, I am writing Vienna again.
Ooh,
I just, like
love it.
Sharon, I'm not talking about this that openly. But on Twitter is where I try to help the writing community. So I'm Rach K Mick everywhere, RACHKMC. Twitter is kind of where I talk publishing. Instagram is where I talk about what I'm reading, but also share bunnies because they make people, including myself, happy. Um, and that's probably those are the best ways to keep in
Excellent.
contact. And if you're going to Vienna, please do let me know because I do have recommendations for a lot of stuff as Sharon does.
Well, and
So
also if you want to see more Rachel interviews with other authors, visit our YouTube channel because there's a lot of Rachel
there's quite a
there's
few.
a lot of Rachel
Yeah.
interviews there on our YouTube channel. And Sharon, you mentioned that you're signed up for book clubs. Is there someplace that people can write to you about maybe doing that? Do you have a website or where you like social media?
Yeah, oh my gosh, absolutely. So I have a website. It's my name, SharonKurtzman.com. And I actually have a page on the website that is for book clubs to
Oh,
contact me.
excellent.
I am so looking forward to having those discussions and because it'll be a book club and I'm assuming most people will have read the book, so I don't have to worry about spoilers. I'm really looking forward to
Yes.
that. And so so people there's a form on there. You can reach out to me that way. I'll also add, there is on that page, you can get to it. Are discussion questions. There is
Mm.
an enhanced reading guide that includes recipes, some from the book, some family recipes,
So cool.
stories around them, and also a suggested menu for book clubs if that's their
Oh,
thing.
very
Isn't that
good.
Uh,
cool?
People can, and also I have a newsletter that goes out once a month. So on my website, you can sign up for my newsletter. You can also find me on Instagram, and my profile has links to everything, my website, signing up for my newsletter. And I'm very active on Instagram. I am very active on my Sharon Kurtzman writer on Facebook. I'm in other places too, but if you really want to keep up with me, Instagram, Sharon Kurtzman writer, and my website and my newsletter are the best places.
Those are the best places. And the newsletters are always the best thing because it gets right to the heart of what you're working on.
Yeah. And just so people know, I send it out once a month, and it's my publishing, newest things in publishing, books I'm reading. I always do a book giveaway, and then the last part is food. So I share recipes and favorite restaurants. And if the person who was asking about going to Vienna is still on, she should go to Skopik and Loan. It is phenomenal. You will have the best Wiener Schnitzel in your life.
Ooh, yum.
So
I
let me
love
give a
it.
shout out to that.
I love that. Sharon, Rachel, this was fantastic. Everybody, thank you for joining in. This is recorded. It'll be on our YouTube channel this evening, and you can share it too. Appreciate both of you so much. Sharon, can't wait for the next book.
Sharon.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Everybody
thank
order
you.
this book right now.
Thank you.
Exactly.
I can't wait for your new ones.
All right, bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.